Good morning, pineapples. Rise in freedom. I'm Austin Petersen. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show, and we're on the For Liberty Network. It's Tuesday, the 30th of September, and I'm glad and thankful to have you all joining us live here, like Drew Van Runkle, Barney Stiles, InJam 77, St. Selma, T-Mill 22, Quest Fanning, and BB for Liberty, all hanging out over in the Rumble chat, along with many, many others. Good morning, good morning. Hope that I put you guys in a good mood to start your day there. I'm your host, Austin Petersen, coming to you live with the truth, the fire, and the freedom here. Glad to have you here. Now, folks, let me tell you what I got lined up today. This is one of those shows where history meets headlines and the stakes couldn't be higher. Today we're going to start with a discussion about the smear campaign against Charlie Kirk posthumously. Wake up, America, when September ends. JJ, too good. He's one of our Tylenol Americans there in the chat. We love you, JJ. Welcome back to the show. We're going to talk about the smear campaign that's been going on against Charlie Kirk. You've heard the whispers. He was walking away from Israel. Interesting. He was secretly rethinking his faith. Is this one of those deathbed confessions? Darwin on his deathbed, right? But in reverse. He was softening lies, pure lies told about Charlie Kirk after his death. Today, we're going to put those rumors 6 feet under where they belong, because Charlie left us his own words in black and white, a letter that he wrote to Benjamin Netanyahu, where he wrote of his deep love for Israel and his mission to defend Judeo-Christian civilization, as he described it. I'm going to read some of this to you. We're going to name some names. Candace Owens, we're looking at you this morning, and we're going to show you why the truth matters more than ever in this moment. No matter what you think of Israel or Palestine in the Middle East, do you care about the truth? Do you give a shit at all what really is true and what's not? We'll talk about it this morning. Apparently, I'm not the only one who's on this subject. I find it quite fascinating, and I couldn't believe that I actually did this, but I actually reached out to Nick Fuentes, of all people, the other day. Because after the death of Charlie Kirk, he's been saying some very interesting and uncharacteristic for Nick Fuentes kinds of things. Now, it could be that it is the ultimate grift. He's been beefing with Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson, and so that might be the reason why he's decided to go after them lately. But I find it fascinating that the anti-Semite caucus, if you will, that's growing in the GOP, I find it fascinating that one of them is now speaking out against the others. Did you see this clip the other day?
Dude, when Tucker Carlson got up at Charlie Kirk's funeral, when they were lowering his coffin into the ground, and he got up on the microphone and said, I'm really sick of these fucking hummus-eating, hook-nosed, money-changing, penny-pitching, Christ-killing Jews that poison the wells in the Middle Ages. You know, I thought that was overkill. I know. People are telling me I've changed. People are telling me I've pivoted.
You do sound like
I know
you
I'm going to sound like a pussy for saying it.
Yeah.
I thought that was a little inappropriate at his funeral. His weeping mother, weeping wife, flanking him on either side, the coffin lowering into the ground.
Yeah.
When Tucker started blasting the K word, he started saying total war in German. I was like, dude, time and place, inappropriate. What is wrong with you? I was like, that's a little far even for me. I don't know what's gotten into him lately. Maybe it's...
What I know is that I know what's gotten into him lately. He called you a little gay kid a few weeks ago. Drew Van Runkle in the chat asks, isn't grift just another name for capitalism in the end? No, because grifting is fraud, and fraud is not part of capitalism. I mean, you commit fraud, but that's not capitalism. So we're going to talk about the smear campaign against Charlie Kirk this morning, and then we're going to pivot in the A2 segment because President Donald Trump just dropped the most ambitious Middle East plan we've seen in decades. He dropped a 20-point Gaza peace plan. Trump himself chairing what he calls the Board of Peace. That's fascinating. So we're going to hear from Donald Trump and find out if he's really going to be able to follow through on his campaign promises to be a peace president.
It's called Peace in the Middle East. So today is a historic day for peace, and Prime Minister Netanyahu and I have just concluded an important meeting on many vital issues, including Iran, trade, the expansion of the Abraham Accords. And most importantly, we discussed how to end the war in Gaza, but it's just a part of the bigger
Acetaminophen and Abraham. This is a man who never had to worry about the medicine he had to put in his mouth. And he did not. That is a man who didn't go to vacation Bible school like I did. I had to spend a week out of my summer singing Father Abraham had many sons, and many sons had Father Abraham. I am one of them, and so are you. And then something. How does the rest of the words go? I don't know. But the Abraham Accords, how could you not even, you live in New York City and you do development and you never had to work with a guy named Abraham? Come on, Donald. Remember acetaminophen? Dos Corinthians and 2 Modelos and 5 Coronas. And so, all right. So then Camellia Peterson is going to join us this morning at 8 a.m. We're going to unpack the tragic Michigan shooting at an LDS church, Latter-day Saints, and the bizarre anti-Mormon backlash that's popped up online. We're going to talk about faith, liberty, and why even in tragedy, religious freedom and tolerance still matter. Camellia at 8. Stick around for that. Dad Bod Baboon says, I asked my mom if she took a bunch of Tylenol when she was pregnant with me. She said, only when I was hungover. Oh, no! Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's not autism. Maybe moms are drinking when they're pregnant. I know. No, God! I'm going to hell.
No, God, please, no!
So we're going to have Camellia at 8 a.m. We're going to talk about the LDS Church. And then I actually reached out to a prominent member of the Mormon community, the LDS. They like to be called Latter-day Saints these days. And hopefully we're going to have him on the show a little later this week. I'm working so hard every day, guys, to try and bring you a fantastic show 5 days a week with fantastic guests, lots of fun content, interesting, funny shirts, but serious news on the Wake Up America show. And then we're going to close the show today. Speaking of fantastic guests, we're going to close today with some cultural fireworks. We're going to talk about with science fiction author Devin Erickson, and he's going to join me to break down J.K. Rowling absolutely torching Emma Watson. That's right. Hermione herself, she's in hot water with the woman who created her. It's about feminism. It's about woke hypocrisy. And it's also about class and wealth and privilege and poverty and socioeconomic status. Hollywood, it's about what happens when Hollywood turns its back on women to please the alphabet mafia. So you don't want to miss today's Breakfast Theater, and thank you, Dad Bod Baboon, for helping to start the unlock of it. But we're going to have Hermione Granger herself, the witch herself, on this show today. As she tries to claw her way back into J.K. Rowling's good graces after stabbing her in the back over trans ideology. It's going to be pure comedy, pure parody, and pure truth. So buckle up, grab some Jeffersonian Java from the Liberty Shop, and settle in. This morning, we're going to expose the liars, honor the truth tellers, and show you why liberty is worth fighting for. This is the Wake Up America show. I'm Austin Petersen. Let's get it. But does that mean I have to meet your father? Abraham.
Those who attack us pay a heavy price. But those who partner with us advance progress and security for their peoples. President Trump just said it. It's also in the Bible. It says, those who will bless you will be blessed, and those who will curse you will be cursed. And that's actually what is happening. We want the blessings. I think we've done a lot in the past 2 years to end the curse. We're not finished, but we've done a lot. And we've done a lot together to end the curse.
So I want to start today with a story that's got me fired up here, because this is not just about one man. It's not just about Charlie Kirk. This is about the truth versus lies. And the legacy media is so irrelevant to a certain extent that now the mainstream media is the podcast media, the podcasters, the pundits, the people like ourselves, the ones who gather together and put together this alternative content. And you know, the legacy media always made a sham show out of having some kind of responsibility to their listeners, to be honest, reporting the news, journalism. Of course, that flew the coop decades and decades ago in this country. But there was never any kind of code of ethics or honor when it came to, there was never any attempt to write a code for people like ourselves whose job it is to sit up and have a microphone. And I do believe in a code of ethics and a code of honor, right? In order to be a virtuous person, doing what we do, when there's so much incentive to do the wrong thing when you're in the media, powerful incentives to do the wrong thing, just like there are in politics in many ways, and so because there is no attempt to try and create institutions that are devoted to, let's say, like a fraternal order, perhaps, of podcasters who adhere to a code of ethics and values and make pledges, voluntary pledges to honor and truth. Anybody just grabs a microphone. I mean, imagine listen, I know that this is a time of populism and we're supposed to be like, oh yeah, they're, very egalitarian. If that's your thing, you're in the wrong place. Because imagine the dumbest kids in history class growing up, grabbing a microphone and starting a podcast. Everybody's going to listen to them. You know why? Because you got to hear, it's like listening to a train wreck. The responsible kids who reported on the truth, they were the boring kids, right? Because honestly, the truth that I found in my 25-year career in politics and the media, what I have found is that the reason why, number one reasons why people don't want the truth is because the truth is boring, because bullshit is just far more interesting. People love bullshit. They swallow bullshit. And I've done experiments because I wanted to know. There was a time when I believed in humanity. There was a time when I really wanted to believe the best in people and to think, oh, well, maybe it's really not like this. So I set myself up over the years, certain experiments, social experiments. Okay, what happens if I word something like this? What happens if I word something like this? And the reactions would be so stark. They call this A/B testing in the marketing industry, right? And they're constantly, you're constantly being A/B tested. I do this when I write emails or when I send out text messages for the grift shop. You do an A/B test. You write one way, you write one another way. You send it out to a small portion of the audience, see how they respond, and then whichever one has the higher click rate or click-through or conversion rate, boom, that's what you get. And this is what you're seeing with a lot of these pundits when it comes to their rhetoric in regards to Israel, Palestine, Charlie Kirk, Netanyahu. And this might be what Nick Fuentes is doing or was doing in the clip that I played earlier for you. He may be A/B testing a little bit of more mainstreamish sounding views in order to see how his audience reacts to it and how, if he could sidestep out of the whole I love Hitler shtick into the mainstream and do it in such a way so as to not have to lose a significant portion of the audience, would he take those steps? Maybe, potentially. Right? And you've seen this with other podcasters. You see it now with Megyn Kelly, who's had to walk back. I guess she hasn't had to walk back her statements about Charlie Kirk and the comments that he made about Israel, the letter that he wrote to Netanyahu before his death. She hasn't had to walk them back because she's still kind of doubling down on this one. Candace Owens, it'll be interesting to see how she reacts to the fact that now the letter that Charlie Kirk wrote is out. She accused him of wanting to convert to Catholicism, right? So they say these kinds of things, these bullshit things, because they know that their audience is going to respond to it and they're going to get a better reaction out of them than they would if they do what I'm doing right now, which is to prepare to tell you the truth, because the dildo of truth rarely arrives lubed. Not only is it boring, but it usually hurts. Sorry for that. So no bullshit. So what are we doing? So we're A/B testing, right? And I suppose if I really wanted to get rich, that's what I should do. Instead of sitting here using my brain to share with you, the knowledge that I'm accumulating, because at night while you're, putting your kids to bed or sitting on your couch and drinking a beer or enjoying your life in some other way, if you are, God bless you. My ass is right here in this chair reading the news so that I can give you a damn good show 5 days a week. Booking the show, creating graphics, putting together the Breakfast Theater segment, and trying to discern the facts from the lies. And I see what's going on around you. And some people, they don't see it. They're not seeing it because they're not really getting into the deep nuance. That's my job. That's fine. I'm here for it. I'm not A/B testing you here. I'm just sharing with you what I deem to be factual and honest.
I don't even know what isolation is. It's just a slur designed to control. One of the ways you shut down debate is by calling people names like isolationists. And calling people names, anti-Semite, isolationist, to get them to stop talking is not the way to serve your country. That's all I'm saying.
So if you're an idiot, you would probably say, yeah, don't call people names. That's not how you get people banned. Don't call people names.
And it is to serve your country. That's all I'm saying.
And it is the neocons, the creepy war worshippers. Barry Weiss' agenda is neocon politics.
The neocons are neocons.
Oh, don't call people isolationists, but call people neocons. Okay.
The neocons, a neocon. I've not called you a neocon once. A neocon. The neocons, which you are. These are pretty stout neocon. Neocons. Neocon. And get on the topic of pizza or neocons, and I'm just out of control. The Episcopalian neocon. Have you noticed that like a huge percentage of war-crazed Republican senators are secretly gay? Like, what is that? That's not a way to get to a solution or have a rational conversation. That's a way to make people be quiet.
Yeah, lies, damn lies, bullshit. He's been misleading us his whole life. Whether it was when he was a war-crazed neocon, or now psychotic, Hitler, Hamas-loving, Hamas-hating isolationist that he is, always misleads us. And let me tell you how I know this guy has been full of shit for years. Way back in 2008, when Ron Paul was running for president, and I was a young man, fervently trying to get him elected, trying to build the libertarian movement as much as I can because of the principles and values that I stand on, which don't flip-flop, which don't jump around, slight variations every like 10 to 15 years on Austin, but you can goddamn guarantee that you can bet that AP will always be standing like a rock on the bedrock foundational principles of this country, right? Not A/B testing an audience to try and figure out what it is that I believe so that I can serve you some bullshit slop every single day on this podcast and tell you what you want to hear because I know you want to hear it because it's going to sell more, Charlie Kirk freedom t-shirts or, Michael Myers, all No Lives Matter hoodies. Although we do have those in the gift shop. But what matters to me is the truth. And the nice thing is that since I don't have any corporate people working, sponsors or bosses or other thing, I can give you the truth unvarnished. And in 2008, when we went to the Rally for the Republic in Minnesota, Tucker Carlson stormed out of the 2008 Ron Paul for the Rally for the Republic because Jesse Ventura suggested that 9/11 might have been an inside job, and he was so disgusted. And Tucker's not stupid. Tucker is not a stupid person. Tucker knows what he's doing. He knows what he's saying. He knows what these terms mean. When Tucker says that he doesn't know something, he's pretending. Tucker is one of the smartest people you know. And Tucker doesn't want to be he never wants to be out of fashion. He always wants to be the current thing. If you know the meme, I support the current thing, that's Tucker Carlson. He supports whatever is the current thing. If it's cool to like Ron Paul, he likes Ron Paul. When it was not cool to like Ron Paul, Tucker Carlson would show up to Ron Paul rallies, but he would show up with prostitutes from Dennis Hoff's Bunny Ranch in Nevada. This is all true. I've been there. I've seen the bodies. So after Charlie Kirk was assassinated last month, the vultures descended. The vultures descended on him, and they have been trying to pick the body clean. But we're not going to let them. We're going to help Charlie to rest in peace by honoring his legacy of what he actually believed. And many of the people who you are listening to the show, you may not like what Charlie Kirk had to say. I might not agree with everything Charlie Kirk had to say. There's some of the clips that have been going around lately, and I'm like, yeah, I don't agree with Charlie Kirk on that. But let's represent him accurately as to what he actually believed, instead of just lying to suit our own agenda. Oh, you know what? Here we go. This is if we were lying to suit our agenda. Did you know that Charlie Kirk was actually abandoning conservatism in his final days? Yeah, he actually was saying he was actually saying that he was abandoning God and becoming a secular libertarian, a secular right-wing libertarian. Yeah, in his final days, on his deathbed, he confessed that he didn't believe in a higher power, and his favorite author was Ayn Rand. He also liked Murray Rothbard and Frederick Bastiat and Mises, and had planned to join the Libertarian Party in 2026. We just didn't know it yet. If only Netanyahu and the neocons would have let it get through, we would have found that out. So, Candace Owens pushed this garbage as well. She said Charlie was under pressure, forced into positions he didn't believe. She hinted that his support for Israel was performative, and the conspiracy swamp, they just lapped it up. They love it, right? In 2025, the truth doesn't make it out. There's such a thick layer of bullshit that the truth can't make it out of the bullshit. And so we're going to try and pierce our way out of the manure. And we're going to do our best to try and get to the truth. So the New York Post released Charlie's own words, a letter dated May 2nd to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Charlie's handwriting. And what did he say? Everything written here is from a place of deep love for Israel and the Jewish people. Not concerns, not rethinking, deep love. This is what Charlie wrote. He says, one of my greatest joys as a Christian is advocating for Israel and forming alliances with Jews in the fight to protect Judeo-Christian civilization. Interesting. Now, does that sound like a man who was abandoning Israel? Or does that sound like a man who died doing what he believed that God put him on this earth to do? So in that letter, which Netanyahu cited himself, in that letter, Charlie Kirk, he laid out a strategy to win Generation Z. He wasn't backing down from that fight. He was ramping up that fight. And here's some of the points that he shared with Benjamin Netanyahu of what the direction was that he thought Netanyahu should go. He said that Benjamin Netanyahu should build a rapid response team like Trump had to fight social media fires in real time and to fight the lies. He said that they should stop outsourcing Israel's defense to American surrogates. Interesting. And then he said, let hostages tour the United States to expose Hamas. Brilliant idea. And then Charlie Kirk said that Netanyahu should launch a PR campaign called Dude, You Got Us Wrong, Real Israelis Debunking the Apartheid Lie. And Charlie Kirk says, and he warned that this should be a 5-alarm fire. That's not a retreat. Charlie Kirk was not retreating. That was a call to arms. So that's the truth. And he warned Netanyahu that Israel should act as if it is undergoing a 5-alarm fire. So again, no matter how you feel about the Gaza war, no matter how you feel about Israel, the Jews, about Islam, no matter how you feel about American Protestantism and neoconservatism in the United States, that's the truth. So now we have the facts and we can distort them as we please, right? So why are people saying these lies about Charlie Kirk? Well, it's because knee-jerk contrarianism sells. And as a lifelong contrarian, I can tell you that if you play the role of opposition forever, You build an audience on that. You build an audience out of being opposed to things, and therefore your audience comes to you because they want to see an alternative viewpoint to whatever is maybe a mainstream view. But just because something's a mainstream view doesn't mean that it's incorrect, right? I know the truth. That gets clicks, right? I know the truth. If you watch the Wake Up America show and you're at $17.76 a month, you will get the truth here on the Wake Up America show, right? But so what's fascinating is that here in the United States, we have the left, which is entirely anti-Semitic. I was talking to Stephanie about this the other day. I'm like, why are so many Jews still members of the Democratic Party when the entire base of the Democratic Party and many of the leaders, including the squad, they hate Jews more than you could ever imagine? Why are so many Jews still Democrats? She's like, I know. It's like these are the people who are going to get loaded onto the cattle car for a second time, right? The Palestinian flag on campus people, right? And these are the people who Charlie Kirk had been doing battle with for years. Then all of a sudden he faces attacks from the right. And then conveniently after he is murdered, some of those opponents of his on the right, admitted opponents of him, choose to take swipes at Charlie Kirk over his views of Israel and anti-Semitism. And they do it. It just happens to be the most convenient for the type of audience that they have been rallying in recent years. It's very convenient for them. So Charlie wasn't imagining this crisis, though, in terms of the views of how the American people feel about Israel. Here's what the numbers show. 62% of Generation Z says Israel is committing apartheid. They couldn't fucking spell apartheid, I promise you. Good morning, Thormac. She just got here. Says some idiot scheduled a meeting. We're talking about Charlie Kirk conspiracies here. We are indeed. Charlie Kirk, the letter that Charlie Kirk wrote to Benjamin Netanyahu was released by the New York Post yesterday. So we're analyzing all the people who lied about how Charlie Kirk felt about Israel after his death and clearing that up. So we're getting the facts straight this morning. It's not a judgment call about, you're going to hear my opinion on this conflict here in just a few minutes. But right now we're just, for Charlie's memory and his honor, we are debunking the smears that have been said and written about him posthumously. Charlie was right when in his letter. He wrote that support for Israel among young Republicans has dropped 18 points in just 4 years. On TikTok, pro-Hamas content outperformed pro-Israel content 4-1 during the Gaza war. Charlie saw that and said that we're losing. Do something. So let me be clear. I'm not some basement libertarian screeching, no foreign entanglements, right, while Iran is trying to build nukes and Hamas hides rockets in schools. I'm more of a realist libertarian in foreign policy. I consider myself to be much closer to something like Javier Milei. I believe in America first, but our allies around the world, they matter. They matter to the security of the defense of the peoples of the United States. Israel's not a colony. It's a sovereign ally on the front line of a global war against barbarism. The barbarism that they're trying to import into our Western countries to bring us down. But if Israel and America ever clashed, I choose America, full stop. But when we're aligned, we should back each other like brothers in arms, right? Charlie's burden was that when he wrote, I'm accused of being a paid apologist for Israel when I defend her. If I don't defend her strongly enough, I'm accused of anti-Semitism. So Charlie lived that tension, right? He bore the brunt of both sides. That is the price that you pay when you are the man in the arena, is that you must suffer the tomatoes and cabbages tossed at you from the peanut gallery of life. I experience it every day. When you stand up to a microphone and you advocate for ideas, you are consenting to an extent to have tomatoes and cabbages thrown at you. Not a 30-06 bullet in your neck, but metaphorically speaking, you have to accept it. Even my own audience doesn't always like or agree with what I have to say, especially on foreign policy these days, because my views have decidedly changed. And on immigration, my views have changed over the long haul. So it's not about Charlie, right? This isn't necessarily about Charlie. We want to honor Charlie and remember him as he wanted to be remembered, a man of faith, a Christian man who supported Israel, who loved his country, who is for America first, but believed that the United States has an ally in Israel and should stand together. That's what he believed. And you don't have to agree with it or disagree with it to say that that's what Charlie believed and that is the truth. And we should honor Charlie by remembering him as he wanted to be remembered, truthfully and faithfully. So it's not about Charlie. It's about whether or not conservatism defends Western civilization or whether we're going to collapse into the bullshit fever swamps of conspiracy brain, of conspiratartary, as Nick Fuentes has pointed out, fascinatingly enough, whether we're going to degrade into the land of bullshit and lies, slander and malign a widow who is grieving for her dead husband, but who is trying to keep his project alive. People pooping all over Charlie's memory and by suggesting that Erica Kirk isn't grieving because she smiled the other day on camera, and making people like Nick Fuentes sound reasonable and sane when they say things like this.
It's the Qatari money or something, but it was a little extreme. The ranting, the raving, it was like, oh boy, that's a little hot even. And they say I'm the #1 anti-Semite. That was a little intense. He can't keep getting away with it. Tucker's crazy. Tucker's a crazy bitch, man. He goes up there, says the money-changing Jews that run Jerusalem, they had to kill Jesus for telling the truth, just like they killed Charlie Kirk. And then he had this maniacal laugh. Then he went, oh, and then they called him out and he said, I didn't say that. He said, me? Everyone eats hummus. I like hummus. What do you mean? He said, dude, the absolute madman. Tucker is like the goat of gaslighting. But unironically, he goes up at the memorial and said, Charlie Kirk told the truth. You know who else told the truth? Jesus. And you know what happened? He got killed by Jews. And people said, so are you saying that the Jews killed Charlie Kirk in the way that they killed Jesus for telling the truth because they hate the truth? And Tucker said, I never said that. You're crazy. I never said that. Everyone eats hummus. What do you mean everyone runs Jerusalem? It was like, dude, the king of gaslighting. The goat of gaslighting. You gotta look, put some respect on his name. The guy's the goat of gaslighting.
True. Nick's right. But is Nick gaslighting us? I don't know. I reached out to Nick and I invited him to be on this show. I haven't spoken to him since 2016. So we'll see if he wants to have a conversation with us, and we'll see if he is also gaslighting. We don't know. But we're glad to have all of our viewers and listeners joining us live this morning on the Wake Up America show. And I just want to remind you about our friends over at crypto.com. We talk about cryptocurrency a lot in this show. I'm wearing my Bitcoin hat today. I'm a big fan of it. Cryptocurrency is not an emerging technology. It is here. And the Trump Media Group just inked this massive $6.4 billion deal with crypto.com. That is the world's top crypto platform. And they're teaming up to scoop up $6.4 billion in CRO. That is the powerhouse token that is fueling fast, low-fee DeFi, staking rewards, and has real-world perks like cash back on your spends to launch America's first CRO treasury. When it's done, this new company is going to be the biggest CRO holder out there. If you want to get in on the action, head to crypto.com today and grab some CRO. Let's make crypto great again. Thank you to Rumble for that this morning. And let's remind everybody that we have bonus content today. Once we hit $75 raised on the Wake Up America show, That will unlock phase 1 of our bonus content. Looks like we've got a little coin hanging out over there. Counting the coins. And thank you for that this morning. If you guys would like to see Hermione Granger herself this morning, the young witch of Hogwarts, she will be joining us live on the Wake Up America show today if we raise $100 for our bonus content. If you guys would like to join us, if you guys would like Hermione Granger to join us on the show today, then keep those Rumble rants coming and make sure that you guys donate enough money in Rumble rants in order to unlock the bonus content. And then, of course, you can also go to the Grift Shop at thegriftshop.com. Check out the Halloween collection, guys. We keep adding new products to the Halloween collection and to some of our regular collections. The Barry Goldwater shirt is available. We have a 15% off sale going on right now. So if you use the code GOTH15, then you can get your Halloween costume for 15% off. So head on over to forlibertyshop.com and check out the Halloween collection. Use the code GOTH15. Halloween's only 31 days away, guys. Get your Halloween costumes, your cheap Halloween costumes, available at forlibertyshop.com. You can get a No Lives Matter hoodie. I've got one of those coming in, and I also have a Department of War with the Pentagon on a Department of War hoodie coming in. And I think I'm going to grab some other items from the Halloween collection. So grab yours today. You can see we've got 5-star reviews from our No Lives Matter Halloween tour. Who gave us a 5-star review? Let's check that out. Let's see. Oh, Derek Nelson says, it's actually super legit. Bought this shirt to support AP, and I got to say, it looks great. Fits the body well. Nice quality, no polyester. I'll be buying more. There you go. And Melissa D'Alessandro, the absolute best comfy shirt to wear while running errands and attending school. It's perfect for political rallies, grocery stores, and sporting events. Anchored by everyone's favorite serial killer. Pick one up and we'll be instant besties, says Melissa D'Alessandro. 5 stars. Use that code GOTH15, guys, and you'll save 15% on your Halloween merch. In 15 minutes, we'll have Camellia Peterson to talk about the shooting at the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Michigan yesterday. It's a great conversation we're going to have, so make sure you stick around with her. She'll be here in about 20 minutes. At 8:30 this morning, we're going to speak to science fiction author Devin Erickson about J.K. Rowling absolutely torching Emma Watson over her support for trans rights. He'll be here with us this morning at 8:30 a.m. Central Time on the Wake Up America show. It's going to be a great conversation. So yesterday, Trump dropped the boldest peace plan that we have seen in decades. And, of course, he put himself in charge of it. He stood next to Netanyahu and said, this could be one of the greatest days ever for civilization. President Trump announces that he will head the international oversight body of the Gaza Strip known as the Board of Peace. Take a listen.
To ensure the success of this effort, my plan calls for the creation of a new international oversight body, the Board of Peace, we call it, the Board of Peace, sort of a beautiful name, the Board of Peace, which will be headed, not at my request, believe me, I'm very busy, but we have to make sure this works. The leaders of the Arab world and Israel and everybody involved asked me to do this, so it would be headed by a gentleman known as President Donald J. Trump of the United States. That's what I want, is some extra work to do, but it's so important that I'm willing to do it, and we'll do it right, and we're going to put leaders from other countries on, and leaders that are very distinguished leaders, and we'll have a board, and one of the people that wants to be on the board is the UK former Prime Minister, Tony Blair, good man. Ensure the
Interesting. So here's some parts of the 20-point plan. It's not vague. It's very clear. He says Hamas is out. For this to go forward, Hamas can no longer control the Gaza Strip. The hostages have to come home, and Gaza gets rebuilt under supervision. Trump chairs the Board of Peace, and Israel falls back to the lines that they had before October 7th. So Trump says that the leaders of the Arab world and Israel asked him to chair this Board of Peace. 8 Arab nations, Egypt, Jordan, Turkey, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Indonesia, Qatar, and the UAE issued a joint statement all praising Trump's leadership on this. Imagine that. Trump, the man that they called Hitler and now being begged by Arab leaders to referee peace in the Middle East and the Israelis, that is, in my mind, to a large extent, if it's successful, this would be a complete and total vindication of the people of Trump, people who said that Trump would be a president who wanted peace if he pulls it off. And that's a massive, massive if. All right. It's not ambiguous here because Trump didn't just dangle incentives. He also gave Hamas an ultimatum in this one, which is key. He says if Hamas refuses these terms, then Israel will have his full backing to finish the job. Seems clear to me. All right. That's not both sides need to de-escalate. That's either you surrender or you get crushed. That, in my mind, is proper leadership. So, if you guys are following this conflict closely, if this is one of your big stories, and if you watch the Wake Up America show regularly, you might note that I don't cover this topic quite frequently. There are a lot of people who make this story, this conflict, the people involved in this conflict, they make it the centerpiece of their coverage and their lives. And I don't, in large part because it is so toxic a subject that no matter what you say, it gets bogged down. And people, because they already come to this with their initial biases, very rarely are you able to really have honest conversations with people or change anybody's minds. It just becomes a rage bait discussion. But because of the massive amount of lies that were being spread about Charlie Kirk after his death, and because of the unbelievably unprecedented actions that Donald Trump is taking to try and bring an end to this conflict, it deserved coverage, A1 and A2 coverage on the Wake Up America show, and I hope that you appreciate it. Speaking of peace, guys, if you're not preparing for the next global shift, you're already behind. I want you guys to sign up for the Expat Money Summit. It's totally free. It's an online summit about how to look into other countries for a second chance at life if you decide to become an expat. A lot of people say to themselves, oh, I don't think I need this. I'm only going to be here. But you never know what the political situation might be if Gavin Newsom or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez become the next president and vice president of the United States. Don't laugh. It's not funny. And it also could happen. I'm telling you. So if you're thinking, I might need a backup plan if Gavin Newsom becomes president of the United States, well, then it's time to start looking into. Now is the discovery time. Right? Stephanie is always amazed at how I'm able to pull out all these incredible victories for our family to find where are you getting this? How are you pulling this off? All these exciting things that I keep pulling out of the rabbits out of the hat. I'm like, well, I was working on it 3 months ago or 6 months ago or a year ago, right? Setting myself up for future wins. If you really want to have a successful life, you have to have some long-term planning. And Expat Money Summit is a good starting place for people to just learn, get educated about what's going on, and especially in Latin America. And if things go well for Argentina, then it would be nice to have a backup plan. I would love to own some land in Argentina, so I'm looking forward to the conversations that are going to occur at expatmoneysummit.com. That's expatmoneysummit.com. If you decide that you would like to have the VIP package from the tour, that's the one that costs money, then you can get a 20% discount if you use my name, AUSTIN. That's AUSTIN. They'll give you a 20% discount at expatmoneysummit.com. And thank you. Looking forward to that conversation with Mikkel Thorup and Mylin Salabari and many others around the world, talking about what's happening in Latin America. So here's the deal. When it comes to the hostages in the conflict, within 72 hours of Israeli acceptance of these terms, all hostages that Hamas has taken must be returned alive or dead. Israel is going to release 250 life sentence prisoners and 1,700 Gaza detainees. So for every deceased Israeli returned, 15 Gazans remains will be exchanged. So a lot of leverage the Israelis have in this conflict. Israel will be forbidden from annexing Gaza in this one if they accept the terms. If the hostages are surrendered, if Hamas backs down, then Israel will be forbidden from annexing Gaza. Remember, all of this goes out the window if they don't return the hostages and if Hamas continues fighting. But underneath this 20-point peace plan that Trump has proposed, Israel would be forbidden from annexing Gaza. They would be governed by a sort of technocratic Palestinian committee, and that committee would be supervised by Trump's Board of Peace. A special economic zone will be created to drive prosperity. They will actually not have any tariffs on goods coming in and out of Palestine, which of Gaza, which is a fascinating thing from the Trump administration proposing no tariffs. Gaza will be governed by this Trump Board of Peace. So a special economic zone will be created to drive prosperity, and Gaza will be flooded with humanitarian aid, but only if Hamas agrees. And if they don't, then the IDF is going to finish the job, and aid will only go to cleared zones. So that's the Trump doctrine. Peace through overwhelming strength. And it's not just about Gaza, because the Arab world is largely on board with this, which means that Iran, which doesn't want this to happen, they become more isolated. So it's actually a brilliant strategic plan from the Trump White House. If it works, if this opens up a back channel between Israel and Iran, that's Nixon in China. That's a Reagan in Moscow. That's Trump in Pyongyang kind of moment times 10. So it could lead to massive benefits for the world and for world peace if Hamas agrees to the 20-point plan. If it doesn't, the slaughter continues. Israel moves to annex Gaza, and the world will not know peace. And we lose a humongous opportunity in the Middle East. And I just have to say thank you. I want to say personally thank you to the Trump White House just for trying. Because nobody wants war. Nobody wants war to continue on forever unabated. If you're going to have a war, you should win the war and get it over with. And Trump wants this war to be over with. And God bless Trump and the Trump administration for trying to end it. You love to see it. Thank you. Thank you for trying. So in my mind, you're either with Western civilization overall, or you're with the rockets, the tunnels, the human shields. You're with the anti-civilizationists, right? Trump's plan is not perfect, but it's real. It has buy-in from Israel. It has buy-in from the Palestinian Authority, and it has buy-in from 8 Muslim majority nations. That is a miracle. Congratulations for at least even getting this far. So here it is, folks. Charlie Kirk, he rang the alarm. Donald Trump answered it. The West has to choose truth or lies, resolve or retreat, civilization or collapse. If you want to honor Charlie Kirk, finish the job that he started. Win the information war, back our allies, defend the West, and don't ever let the liars rewrite history, not while we're still breathing. We're going to talk about what happened in Grand Blanc Township, Michigan. It wasn't just a tragedy. It was a direct assault on religious liberty in this country. We're going to talk to Camellia Peterson about that when we get back on the Wake Up America show on the 4 Liberty Network.
Are you tired of the strange radioactive effects of leftist culture? Do you ever wonder what happened to good old-fashioned American values? Well, fear no more, because there's a new force fighting back against the cultural rot of today. Introducing Culturama, a right-of-center talk show that's taking back the future today. hosted by none other than blonde bombshell herself, Daniela Pensack. She's not just talking, she's taking culture back, with sharp takes, brilliant guests, and a few surprises along the way. Tune in to the live video podcast twice a week, because the future doesn't have to be weird. It can be Culturama!
If there wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive, and if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty. I am not a perfect messenger, but I think I'm a damn good one. This is a replica of our first president's flintlock pistol. You have my full support, my respect, and my gun.
I think that the heart of my philosophy is much more libertarianism than well, that's the fashionable word these days, I guess. A conservative is no longer just that. He's a libertarian, and always has been.
Yet any time you and I question the schemes of the do-gooders, we're denounced as being against their humanitarian goals. They say we're always against things, we're never for anything.
What is fascism? Fascism is private ownership, private enterprise, but total government control and regulation.
Well, the trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conservative, so-called, is the one that says less government, get off my back, get out of my pocket, and let me have more control of my own destiny.
Do you hate the deep state? Do you reject the Antichrist in all his ways? Do you believe that aliens could...
When the Founding Fathers dreamed of liberty, they forgot one thing: coffee. Introducing Founding Flavors Coffee, the brew that built America, and the brew that's fueling a new revolution, one kitchen at a time. Small batch roasted, Patriot approved, and disappearing faster than a redcoat at Yorktown. Don't get left behind, soldier. Real patriots are starting their mornings with Founding Flavors. And trust us, freedom tastes better with a fresh cup in your hand. Stop drinking those tyrant brews who take your money and don't support your values. Stocks are limited, demand is booming, and your morning deserves a taste of liberty. Order now at forlibertyshop.com before the next shipment gets signed, sealed, and sold out. Founding Flavors Coffee, the official brew of morning rebellions everywhere. Get yours at forlibertyshop.com. Legend has it, back in 1773, a band of angry, overtaxed patriots stormed a British ship, found the king's favorite tea, and said, "This would taste better without the tyranny." Then they tossed it overboard. Fast forward to today. That revolutionary spirit lives on in Boston Harbor Black, the boldest brew in the 4 Libert tea lineup. It's dark,
It's smooth. It's unapologetically American, just like the folks who drink it. Whether you're sweetening it up on the front porch or drinking it straight like a Minuteman before battle, this isn't tea for royalty. It's tea for rebels. No fake flavors, no corporate slogans, just a cold glass of Don't Tread on Me in liquid form. So skip the woke iced tea aisle and stock up on Boston Harbor Black at forlibertyshop.com. Because when the heat's rising, the least you can do is drink like a patriot. Picture this. It's 1776. Thomas Jefferson is hunched over his desk at Monticello, ink-stained fingers, writing the most radical document in human history. Do you really think he was sipping Starbucks? No. He was drinking something bold, something black, something brewed strong enough to fuel a revolution. That's the spirit behind Founding Flavors, our signature line of liberty-fueled coffee. No soy froth, no climate guilt, no corporate slogans. Just real coffee, inspired by the men who wrote freedom into existence. Every cup is a quiet protest. Against mediocrity, against tyranny, against bad coffee. So this morning, skip the globalist brew. Grab something worthy of a free man's sunrise. Founding Flavors. Now brewing at forlibertyshop.com.
There is an image of this Michigan shooter, the alleged shooter, social media account. It shows the suspect in a Trump 2020 shirt. It's a photo from 2019. There was also a Trump Vance sign outside the suspect's home. We don't know who placed it. I think that I want to make sure that I'm noting that this is not suggesting that Trump had anything to do with it, but the idea that this person came from the left, this might undermine that, given the fact that they're...
Sure, we know that that wasn't what you were trying to get across there, Jake Tapper. Welcome to the Wake Up America show. This morning, we're not letting anybody rewrite history on the show, not while we're still breathing. What happened in Grand Blanc Township was a direct assault on religious liberty in this country. A man drove his truck into a church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints during worship. He doused the building in gasoline, opened fire, and set it ablaze. 4 people are dead, 8 others are wounded. And now investigators are confirming what many appeared. This attack was motivated by hate. The suspect, a former Marine, had called Mormonism the Antichrist. He had gone on rants about church doctrines, and days before the attack, he told a local candidate he was preparing to cleanse the church. So it wasn't random. It was targeted violence aimed at a specific American faith, an original American faith, a faith that, like many others, has been caricatured, mocked, and misunderstood. Now, I'm no Mormon. I'm not religious at all, but I'll tell you this. I've actually always respected the Mormon faith. The Latter-day Saints are some of the most independent, some of the most self-reliant and community-minded people that you'll ever meet. In many ways, it's one of the most libertarian expressions of organized religion in this country. They don't rely on government. They build their own networks, their own welfare programs, their own emergency prep. They believe in strong families, hard work, and decentralized authority. That makes them a target for radicals, but it also makes them an ally in the fight for liberty. So today, we're going to take a closer look at this, not just at the shooting, but at the backlash, the conspiracy theories, the anti-Mormon hate that's been bubbling up. Joining me now is somebody who knows this issue well. She's a political strategist and a longtime liberty advocate, Camellia Peterson. Hi, CJ.
Good morning.
So your thoughts on this incident overall?
Terrible, obviously. I think, it was interesting to watch how things played out given the context of the events in recent months. And of course, the first thing everybody asks is, what is their political ideology, right? I mean, it's unfortunate, I guess, that that's where we are. But this really wasn't political at all. It was, I don't know how you explain this. I mean, it is certainly hatred towards Mormonism, which I don't really understand. And so I think that, when you have a situation like this, who is clearly a conservative person, comes from a conservative background, apparently had a bad experience with someone who was, and who knows what started him down that path, but the decision in his mind to pinpoint that particular religion, I think, is probably rooted in far deeper issues when it comes to, you know, his mental health and his outlook on life, because I know plenty of people who disagree with Mormonism, you know, and they don't, you know, there's this whole debate that started raging then about, oh, are Mormons Christians? And so then, you know, that debate was raging online, which is just ridiculous and unproductive. But I know plenty of people in those camps, but they don't go around, you know, shooting up churches.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of people online mocking the LDS Church. They're kind of dismissing this, say it's just a cult attack. Why do you think Mormons in particular attract this kind of hostility, even in conservative spaces?
I mean, I think that we should be able to admit that there are aspects to Mormonism that are different, that, you know, people don't understand, you know, as far as, you know, when you talk about Joseph Smith and kind of how they came to get a lot of the tenets live by. I mean, you know, probably I will admit, like, the first thing that comes to mind whenever I hear Mormonism is, I think it's unfortunate that they can't drink coffee because, like, they're missing out on one of life's greatest pleasures. But I'm just saying, like, I think there are a lot of, like, little more oddity type things like that just people don't understand, and so they, you know, they dislike that thing that's different. And I, you know, like, obviously when people also think Mormonism, they also think polygamy. And so that is not necessarily, there are even within Mormonism, there are sects and branches, you know, of groups that have split off or have gone different ways and that hold different beliefs when it comes to those sort of things. So yes, I think there's just a lot there that people don't understand, and it becomes much like racism, it becomes a target of their anger.
So how much do you know about the LDS Church? I mean, we're in Missouri. There's quite a few of them here, not as many as there are in Utah, but I've known quite a few over my lifetime. I don't know if you have much personal experience with people from the Church of Latter-day Saints. And I can tell you that when I ran for office, that the religious people who showed up the most to support my campaign tended to be the Latter-day Saints, and it was because they really identified with the message of individualism and self-reliance. And a large part of that had to do with the fact that the Mormons and the federal government have not been friends over their history here in the United States.
Sure. Well, there is a certain, you know, independence and that comes with, you know, living in a faith that is different, and that a lot of people, you know, mock and don't understand and don't consider you Christian and consider you heretical. I was not Mormon, but I grew up in a faith like that. And so, you know, there were, like, the vast majority of Christians would have considered, you know, some of the tenets of our faith heretical. And so it just is, you know, so I get that. Like, it forces you to become comfortable with not being socially accepted everywhere, and with being different for the things that you believe in and live by.
After the shooting that they had at the Catholic Church, why have the churches not figured out, Camellia, that they need to have armed security or guards, or at least at their own, that they're carrying to defend themselves? Why is the religious community not understanding that they are all now targets of some lunatic in their community, whether it be atheist, Christian, Muslim, or whatever? Why do you think that they're not doing what's necessary? How come they're not learning? Do you think it's because they think God will protect them ultimately, or what's going on? Why aren't they defending themselves?
I don't know. It really did surprise me, because I had not realized that the LDS Church had taken the stance of discouraging people carrying. Actually, really surprised me. I didn't expect that at all. And so I don't, like, I'm baffled by how they got to that point, right? I mean, if if nothing else, that we should be learning the lessons over the last several years through COVID and everything, where, they're shutting churches down and threatening them with, law enforcement if they open their doors. Like, they should have learned the importance of carrying in self-defense in your churches. Like, clearly, I think there are people who obviously probably will carry anyway, even if they just don't say anything about it. And I think that that's a good thing.
Over in the chat, our friend, I think Amy J.E., she says, could guards have stopped this guy's truck? He rammed his truck in the side of the building. No. Yeah. But he then went inside and started lighting fires. He lit the church on fire after that. So they could have stopped him then. I guess there's something about, because when you go to church, right, it's supposed to be a place of peace, right? It's a place of worship. So you don't associate a place of peace and a place of worship with a place of weapons, a place of firearms, right? And nobody wants to have an armed guard standing outside their church. But I mean, it almost feels like, Camellia, and this is a problem I think that is a cultural problem that it goes into, it's sort of infected every institution, but it seems like a lot of Americans don't know what time it is. Like, there's been no consequences for a long time in American history. You could get away with not paying attention to politics. You could get away with not reading the news. You could get away with it, and you could live peacefully in the United States and not have to worry about what's going on in the world, and be divorced from it to a certain extent, because it wouldn't reach its claws into your life. But I think the time for that is past, and that now, that more than ever, that we need an alert citizenry to understand what time it is and the threats that exist to our lives and our liberty and our property. Do you agree with that analysis?
Yes. So I don't know if you saw in the last couple of days, somebody posted on X, they were like, so somebody tell me exactly at what point America started to go downhill or things changed or whatever. So I saw one person post that, and they said FDR. And I was gratified in the comments to see an overwhelming number of comments that said, oh, wait, no, you need to go back to Woodrow Wilson.
Yeah.
So, but the bigger point is, though, that there was this point in our history where, and it's probably around the Great Depression, where government started to be the answer because problems looked too big for individual people to take on by themselves. And so they looked to the government. And this has been just increasingly more and more this way. And we've reached this point, and like, people should understand now that your government cannot save you. And so that I think we have reached a point where people are understanding that. And the question is now, what do we do with that? Do we say that the answer to all of this violence that we are seeing in our society more every day, that it's the government's job to step in and take care of that? Do we hand over more responsibility and more authority to them? Do we let them limit our personal freedoms in the name of safety because we expect them to keep us safe? And don't get me wrong, like, one of the functions of government is to protect life, right? So, I mean, that is a basic function, but government cannot even do that well because we have expected them to do so many other things for us that the Leviathan is just slow and sluggish, and it cannot operate even to protect us in, a functional way. So I think in a lot of aspects, I think this is a snowflake, right? I mean, this is not just about bigotry and about violence. It's about, what do we hand over in our day-to-day lives to the government to do? Do we expect them to clothe us? Do we expect it to feed us? And the answer has been yes on a lot of those things. And I will tell you, I met with a gentleman and his wife last night for dinner who started a gospel mission outreach in Joplin many years ago called Watered Gardens. And basically their approach, what they had been, is in trying to help people who were homeless and on the streets, they discovered that what they were doing wasn't helping because it was toxic sympathy. And they weren't. So, yes. So they changed. Here's the thing. They changed their model of how they were doing this. And their model that they have built now is an example of how this should be done across the nation. And basically, they require something of people when they come in. They say, okay, you are worth something, and so you need to put some work into this. You need to earn what you keep. So we give you something to do in exchange for a meal, in exchange for a place to stay. And so they have built up what is really true charity. And so it's this idea that communities are taking back the responsibility, and they are pushing people away from that government teat that they become so dependent on because we've incentivized it. And so I think that this whole societal structure that we've set up in this dependence on the government is in a lot of ways how we get to where we are now, because we have created a weak and dependent people who now think that the answer is to turn to violence against their fellow human beings.
Yeah, amen. Boy, Camellia, this is why you're on this show Tuesdays and Thursdays. At 8 a.m. Central. That's why you're here. I love hearing that stuff, Camellia. It makes me feel better. And I imagine for the people tuning into the show this morning that they really identify to. People like Cecilia H. and Wyo Wildman. Cecilia, did you get married or did you get engaged? I heard some news on the love front there, Cecilia. Tell us in the chat all the juicy gossip. And don't forget to click the like button today. If it's the first time that you're watching the Wake Up America show on Rumble, click the follow button as well so that you get notifications when we go live. Government shutdown, great idea or greatest idea, Camellia? Be still my heart.
Like, it is so, like, what are we even doing here, right? I mean, you know, I thought we had the majority. Do we not have the capability to tell the Democrats that, no, you're not going to get all of these extra things back in this? And like, how are they holding this hostage? I don't know that it doesn't do any good to have a government shut down. It probably has some negative impacts. But at the same time, why are we also continuing Biden-level eras of spending? Like, none of this makes any sense. Somebody make it make sense.
Well, what did you think about the Office of Management and Budget? OMB Director Russ Vought was saying that, you know, if you leave your job while there's a shutdown, don't come back. I was just kind of like, Lord, this is what I voted for, Camellia. This is what I voted for.
This is one way to cut spending. And I'm just saying, like, if they think that, I guess it all depends. Are they planning to replace them if they leave? Because at the same time, I mean, you have to figure, you know, this is a risk you take when you work for the government, right? Like, you have to expect a little bit of instability. But I think because we've become so dependent on government, we think it's a guarantee. And so if you have a government job, boy, you are set and you have a sweet deal with a sweet pension. And it's really not fair. If I'm just being real here, like, why do government employees get all of this stuff that, you know, the rest of us don't get? Like, we're paying for their salary, so let's level the playing field. But that said, like, this is a risk you take if you're working for the government, that if things go sideways like this, I mean, so yeah, I think you either leave and go get another job, but know that you can be replaced. I think that we've created this scenario where people have this expectation if they work a government job that they can't be replaced.
Yeah, no kidding. I'd love to see it replaceable. I have an interview that we did yesterday with that Jesse Waters did yesterday with one of the former Doge members, Big Balls. And here's what they were discussing on Jesse Waters yesterday. Take a listen.
President the other day. How did you feel about that back in action?
Well, I think, you know, Elon Musk and President Trump have a lot of things in common. And I think they both really want to help society. I think they're both great individuals. And I'd love if they can reconcile their problems and get back together. That'd be great.
All right. Well, it'd be great if everybody can get back together without throwing haymakers.
Yeah, what do you got? What do you think, Camellia? Could we see potentially, Trump and Elon Musk standing together, microphones in hand on stage and singing Endless Love? My love, my love, my endless love.
I think even if they did, I'm not super confident that it would last, because I think part of this, in addition to there being, you know, some actual fundamental differences in, points of view on the correct way to proceed, like, I also think that you have two very big personalities.
That's what you get when you get a couple of alpha.
thing.
That's what happens when you get a couple of alpha males in the room together. It's like when you see me with like some other like dude with alpha energy, and we're just kind of like, but it's like,
no, you know what they say. No, you saw those kids that are like, we're alpha.
Our alphas, yeah. Oh God, no, yeah, those Republicans. Hey, did you have an opinion about that kid the one who was causing so much of a stir because he was wearing a $300 polo and in a private plane? Brylin Hollyhand, I think was
like. Is that not the most Hollywood name ever? Like, anyway.
I'm a Southern conservative.
No, I know a lot of people were getting grief because they were really skeptical of him. Like, just seemed a little too neat, convenient, put together. Like his social media engagement, like literally spiked. I mean, not just like a little bit, and didn't just kind of grow. It like spiked, and you can only do that just a couple of different ways.
Yeah, one of them is to buy paid advertising and to. Oh my God, I'd be such a huge podcaster if I could spend $10,000 a month on ads.
Yeah. But I mean, like the truth came out that this was really something that he initiated. It wasn't something that TPUSA initiated, and a couple of people in their leadership came out, and it's like it's unfortunate because. There are plenty of people who are trying to who are opportunistic and see the opportunity and decide to try to jump on that.
To fill his shoes.
Right. Well, I mean, to fill his shoes, but there's also something to be said wanting their own spot in the spotlight, right?
Sure.
I mean, this is very much self-serving in a lot of ways too. So if you have to be dishonest to do something like that, then you've probably got your priorities wrong. And your goals wrong as well.
Yeah, it's people are they're reaching for the brass ring, and I get it. As a young man, I reached for the brass ring as well. It's just that what I thought was interesting from a cultural standpoint, this Brylin Hollyhand, he records this video. He's going on a campus tour. He wants to step into Charlie Kirk's shoes, and people are ripping him for being in a private plane. They're ripping him for his $300 polo that he's wearing and for having a very expensive watch and just kind of coming off as inauthentic. But it kind of shows how populism has taken over the Republican Party, because part of it really was a lot of it is that the Republican Party, it being the party of blue collars, with the blue collars, with the rabble, you get the behavior of the peanut gallery, the 24 out of 32 teeth, where it's like, it's a rich man with his rich money and his rich ways. And it's kind of like quiet peasants. At some point I was like, so I'm going to actually, in solidarity with the wealthy class that I aspire to be,
so
I'm going to give him a chance and listen. And if he comes off, if he sucks, then he sucks and we'll toss him aside. But I'm going to give him a shot.
Okay, you do that. And I would just like to say that, like, I have absolutely zero doubt that, when you are raking in, when you hit the 1 billion mark, let's just think really optimistically here, okay, right? When you hit the 1 billion mark, you will still be going to TJ Maxx and buying your floral shirts.
That's where I got this, yeah. Where do you think I get all these amazing shirts? Yes, you're right. I will just be spending more money at TJ Maxx. So
I do think though that this is also, I think this is why so many people like somebody like Elon Musk, who is, a billionaire and clearly wealthy, but he does not go around flaunting it. He's like looks like a very normal guy, goes around wearing t-shirts and pants and whatever. Like he's not flashy, you know what I'm saying? So I think that there is an appeal to that. He's one of us, but he's a billionaire.
Yeah, I love Camellia, is there anything else that you want to share with our audience before we let you go?
I can't think of a thing. I hope you all have a wonderful day. We are in false fall here in Missouri, so it's hot again, but autumn is coming.
Yes, and we are going to hang out together at Oktoberfest on October 11th in Herman, or is it 12th?
Sunday.
Yeah, October 12th. Anybody who wants to come to Missouri and join us at Oktoberfest that day is welcome. Thank you, Camellia.
Be fun.
And thank you to Cecilia for unlocking that bonus content.
Left the left a couple of weeks ago, and I would just like to apologize. Anyone who saw any post, comment, repost of mine that had any sort of leftist ideology and propaganda. I was so wrong. I can't even begin to explain how it feels to realize that you've been fed propaganda for years. For 32 years of my life, I have been an independent but left-leaning and Democratic voter. I'm so sorry. I fell right into the propagandist, radical, leftist craziness. Please understand that the woke mind virus is very real. It's very real, and it is embarrassing as hell coming out of something like that. However, I'd like to say that I am so grateful to every Republican and conservative that has been so kind to me and welcoming and forgiving. I'd also like to apologize to the autism parent community.
Nice. You love to see it. All right. So our next segment coming up after the break, after the bonus content, swings us from bullets and faith conversation into imagination in the culture war, because today in the world of authors and ideas, J.K. Rowling unloaded on Emma Watson hard. Rowling called Watson ignorant in a blistering social media post, accused her of misunderstanding the stakes in the fight over sex, gender, women's rights. We're going to talk to author Devin Erickson about that when we get back. Don't go away. Enjoy the bonus content. After we have Devin Erickson on the show at the end, we've got Breakfast Theater. Hermione Granger, the witch herself, will be joining us live on the show. It's going to be a fantastic final 30 minutes of the Wake Up America show on the For Liberty Network. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
There are quite a few dramatic, almost folkloric stories about Assata Shakur, the American militant and self-avowed anti-government revolutionary who escaped from prison in 1979, not long after she was convicted of murdering a New Jersey state trooper. But a relatively quiet one stands out to me. During a walk, a police officer stopped and asked her for her papers. Her offense: she was black. It was the very sort of racist, dystopian targeting Shakur spent her life attempting to combat. Which is why it is richly ironic that this happened in Cuba, the place where she sought refuge from the racism and oppression of the US. How did she reconcile this? Look, there's racism here. There's racism in the United States, she told CNN in Havana in 1998. The difference is that the people at the top in the United States are the ones perpetuating that racist system, and the leadership here are trying to dismantle it. It's an answer that tells you a lot, not just about Shakur, but about certain political factions that still exist today. Shakur, who died last week at age 78, lived the rest of her life in, and often vocally supported, Cuba, where the system has long been known for imprisoning political dissidents, severely curtailing civil liberties, and forging equality in the sense that people are more equally oppressed. By Shakur's telling, she was a freedom fighter. In the early 1970s, after a stint with the Black Panthers, she joined the Black Liberation Army, an offshoot of the Panthers whose members were accused of murdering law enforcement officers, bombing buildings, and robbing banks, done in the name of forcefully taking freedom for black people from a government that denied it. She shed the name Joanne Chesimard and exchanged it for what she would become widely known as Assata, meaning she who struggles in Swahili, and Shakur, meaning thankful one in Arabic. Over the course of a few years, she was charged with multiple counts of robbery, kidnapping, attempted murder, and murder, all of which were dismissed or ended in an acquittal or a hung jury, until they didn't. In 1977, she was found guilty of murdering Trooper Werner Forster in a shootout on the New Jersey Turnpike. 2 years into her life sentence, members of the Black Liberation Army sprung her from prison. She resurfaced in 1984 in Cuba, the place she would call home for over 40 years, out of reach of U.S. extradition. Shakur's legacy is complicated by the era in which her American activism existed. It coincided, for one, with COINTELPRO, the notorious FBI counterintelligence program that illegally surveilled and stirred the pot among political movements deemed malignant. Those unconstitutional actions, often paired with shoddy casework by prosecutors, flimsy evidence, overcharging, unreliable witnesses, and politically motivated cases, led many judges to dismiss indictments entirely, It all added fuel to why groups like the Black Liberation Army emerged in the first place. People have constitutional rights, and you can't shuffle them around, a New York judge said, while dismissing several charges against Shakur. The activist and fugitive always maintained she didn't kill Forster. During her trial, 2 physicians testified that the bullet wounds she sustained on the turnpike, one of which shattered her collarbone, could only have occurred if she had her hands and arms raised above her head, precluding her ability to fire any weapon. "You have convicted a woman who had her hands in the air," Shakur said after the guilty verdict was read. But even if you believe her to have been wrongly convicted, the impulse among some, from the Chicago Teachers Union and the Democratic Socialists of America, DSA, to politicians, pundits, and activists, to treat her as a martyr for freedom is, to put it kindly, misguided. There are a few reasons for that. The Black Liberation Army was, for one, not vague about its support for armed struggle and urban guerrilla warfare. People have the right to free themselves from oppression by whatever means they deem possible, Shakur told NBC in 1998, when she again maintained she was innocent of murder. It's a strange sort of cognitive dissonance that effectively amounts to, I didn't do it, but if I did do it, it would have been okay. Yet the greater cognitive dissonance, and Shakur's real legacy, is grounded in the place she found sanctuary, and whose government she said was doing it right, Cuba. I eventually became convinced that the Cuban government was completely committed to eliminating all forms of racism, she wrote in her autobiography, Asada. There were no racist institutions, structures, or organizations, and I understood how the Cuban economic system undermined rather than fed racism. The same argument she would echo throughout her life, including in her late 90s CNN interview. It's a stunning claim to make, especially from an alleged radical for freedom. This is the same government that sent armed militiamen to shut down media for the offense of being opposed to Cuban dictator Fidel Castro, whom Shakur affectionately calls Fidel in her autobiography. It is the same government that put Christians, gays, and political dissidents in concentration camps. It is the same government that has, for decades, imprisoned people for having the audacity to criticize the state. And it is the same communist economic system that has tried to engineer equality such that it has resulted in hunger and widespread shortages, not just of food, but of basic goods. The argument still resonates among certain left-wing factions. The American state brutally oppressed Asada and her Black Panther Party comrades, the DSA said in a statement following Shakur's death. The Cubans welcomed her and other black revolutionaries with asylum, and their solidarity and loyalty allowed Asada to live out her days in Havana. But the asylum grants to Shakur and those like her had little to do with any devotion to freedom. Back then, if it annoyed the United States government, a Cuban diplomat told CNN's Patrick Oppman, that was a good enough reason to do something. In 2021, the island saw the largest anti-government protests in decades. Black Lives Matter, BLM, responded by blaming the U.S. government for instigating suffering for the country's 11 million people, of which 4 million are black and brown, with its embargo on trade, which the group said was punishment for Cuba's commitment to sovereignty and self-determination in the face of adversity. Cuba has historically demonstrated solidarity with oppressed peoples of African descent, like Asada Shakur. The U.S. embargo is unjust, but it isn't the root of the island's problems. That summer, I spoke to 2 black Cuban residents about the protests. What's wrong with them? One of them asked me about BLM. The notion that Cuban society is devoid of racism, he said, was ridiculous. So was the idea that Cubans are truly free. Our conversation took place over encrypted messaging, and a portion of it consisted of the 2 men deciding if they felt comfortable talking to me at all. You have to respond in a way that doesn't screw you over, said the other man. They're arresting people at their homes. In other words, there is a real movement for freedom in Cuba, one that comes at great personal risk. Perhaps Asada Shakur had a change of heart before her death and stood with it. Something tells me she did not.
Well, I'd like to think so, and I think there are some other positive signs too that things are shifting. When you see the media starting to say trans women are men, then I think we really are winning. But Emma Watson was careful, wasn't she, not to go too far. I think what she's going to find now is you can't sit on the fence. She was a real cheerleader for Mermaids, the charity, and for transitioning children and for people knowing who they are.
There's also kind of there's that clip of her at the BAFTAs, and it was just kind of like a really snidey, there's that bit where she says, I'm here for all the witches, like, but one. Or what, yeah, it was just nasty.
Yeah.
Right when J.K. Rowling was getting a lot of rape threats, death threats.
So whether she is trying to row back from that full-hearted support for transitioning children, or whether she's just trying to get back in with J.K. Rowling in the hope of work, who knows? Richard Dawkins is an interesting case because, I'm sure when he wrote The God Delusion, he thought that was quite out there. It turns out that saying men can't become women is even more out there, and who would have thought that? But he is someone whose career is so established that he's not at any risk. The real win is when ordinary people can say those things, and I don't think we're quite there yet.
Interesting. We're not there. Ordinary people can't say things that are true, that women can't become men. It's a big story. All right, so the news. J.K. Rowling, she calls Emma Watson ignorant and blasts her in a social media post. You got to read it. It's fascinating. If you haven't read it, we're not going to have time to read it now because we're going to have some decomposition. He's going to compose and decompose this status. He's a science fiction author, a frequent guest on the show. And we love hearing from him. Devin Erickson, the author of Theft of Fire, which you can find on many fine bookstores, and the audio version at devinerickson.com. Good morning, Devin. Welcome to the Wake Up America show.
Well, good morning.
So maybe just comment on that, the fact that in the UK that telling the truth might get you clapped in irons.
Well, this has been happening for some time over a lot of things. When you start arresting people over expressing socio-political opinions, it all pretty much goes downhill from there. So, in my opinion, the United Kingdom is just entirely fake and gay now.
This conversation is more than just about two women involved in a minor spat. This is a civilizational level discussion. Very few works of art like Harry Potter have achieved the kind of cultural cachet that J.K. Rowling has achieved with her great work of art. She feels betrayed by Emma Watson, who stabbed her in the back at the height of the woke frenzy. Now that the woke frenzy is starting to recede and we're seeing all the little planktons and sea stars and things left on the beach, most people who are normal, right-thinking, regular, average people look at what the woke movement is and they rightly are disgusted by what they see out of the ocean of muck that the left has foisted on our cultures. So talk to us, dig into this, give us your broad view. What role do you think that this conflict between Rowling and Watson plays for the broader discussion in our civilizations?
Well, we can get bogged down in watching the drama on Twitter, but if we sort of take a step back and think about what systemically is really going on here, then what we take away from this is that certain people don't really have opinions, because whenever they open their mouths, what they are actually doing is trying to align themselves with the existing power structure. So, Emma Watson is a very typical example. A lot more common with women than men, although it happens with both, is that when she opens her mouth, she's not saying, I think this, I think that. She doesn't have any thoughts. She's an actress. She is a professional hand puppet whose entire job is to get paid a lot of money for having someone else shove their hand up her ass and move her mouth. That's her job. So did you really expect her to have her own takes? Of course not. What she's actually saying is, I align with the existing power structure. Please don't hurt me or put me out of a job. And now she's saying, I'm going to align with all the power structures because I don't know which one will win.
Now, Rowling has called Watson ignorant. In a way, she's sort of echoing the old Department of youngest and then the oldest Department of Defense Secretary, Donald Rumsfeld, who talked about known knowns and unknown knowns and unknown unknowns, because what Rowling accused Watson of being ignorant of how ignorant she is, in that Watson, when J.K. Rowling was 14 years old, she lived in poverty. When she was writing the book that made Emma famous, she lived in poverty. Emma Watson doesn't understand, and I think this is kind of the crux of this situation, is that people like Emma Watson will never have to go to a public bathhouse, a public pool, have to worry about having, anything other than a security guard standing outside a toilet if she happens to use one, while the rest of the women in her civilization have to struggle and have to suffer the slings and arrows of the outrageous fortunes that the woke left pushes on these women and puts these women in danger. It really is. In my mind, that's the crux of the argument, isn't it?
Well, the point in itself is salient, but I think we need to have a little bit more of a critical, and like I said, Emma Watson has no opinions. So it's like she has this opinion because she's ignorant. No, she doesn't have an opinion at all. She has, what will keep Emma Watson safe and employed when she opens her mouth. So the ignorance doesn't even enter into it. She's just a sort of an electronic repeater box for whatever the people around her are saying. But I think that J.K. Rowling gets entirely too much credit for pointing out this one salient thing because, despite the fact that she was living in poverty and had a husband who was beating the shit out of her, so she was definitely exposed to risk, but that hasn't impacted her modern thinking as much as her political ideology, because the women of the UK are much more at risk from unrestricted third world thug immigration than Troons. And guess what J.K. Rowling is all in favor of as a good little left-wing liberal. See, it's not that J.K. Rowling isn't sheltered. She can make that argument. It's that cultural indoctrination is overcoming life experience. J.K. Rowling is culturally indoctrinated into feminism, and she passes this off as life experience, but she's also culturally indoctrinated into importing the end of Western civilization, which of course makes women not very safe at all, as we have seen over and over and over again. So
she's only getting
Emma
one
Watson
piece of the puzzle.
Is just saying whatever. But J.K. Rowling is parroting an ideology. She has opinions, but they don't bend to evidence.
So, in other words, J.K. Rowling, she only sees one piece of the puzzle because she's still accepting the mass migration into her country, not understanding that also places women in danger.
Yes.
So she's missing it. But because this one incident affects her and is about the central focus of her life, this is the trend that I'm seeing amongst some of these woke people, is that as soon as that one issue affects them, then they back off of that one issue, but they don't recognize that it's a tree of poisoned roots.
Yeah. Well, J.K. Rowling is actually has opinions and is fairly smart, but sometimes being fairly smart just means you can you're better at talking yourself into silly things. Mm-hmm. And what I've pointed out repeatedly in the past is that she doesn't really understand that even with the Troons, the call is coming from inside the house all along. The transsexual fad, the transsexual craze, the transsexual movement has its roots in the basic history of feminism. Feminism's big push to claim all the perks of the male role was centered around this weaponized idea that gender is a social construct. Gender is a social construct, therefore, anytime a man gets a cookie and we don't, it is, it is oppression. Regardless of what men do and what women do and what their roles are and, what actually works. None of that matters. Gender is a social construct. Therefore, we should get all the cookies that men get. And when you open this door labeled gender is a social construct, what that means is that woman is a role. And if a woman is a role, if it's something you do rather than something that you are, then anyone can become a woman by doing woman stuff. So, and as feminism creates this sort of, women get all the cookies paradigm, and is constantly culturally dominant, where it's saying to little boys, men are terrible, men are responsible for everything that's bad about the world, you are inherently evil because you are a 6-year-old boy, then it's not surprising that some of them are going to say, well, I'm failing as a man, I want to be a woman. And this places me higher in the demographic hierarchy that leftism has created. And anytime an actual woman objects to this because it has negative fallout on women, that he just says gender is a social construct. And this is something that feminism has already established as an unquestionable truth. Therefore, it's an unimpeachable weapon against people who want to pump the brakes.
Devin, I'm not sure how familiar you are with Harry Potter, the storyline itself, but have you met? I should have asked you before the interview, but did you happen to read her books, the books, or watch the movies?
Well, when I was practicing to become an author myself, I did read some of the material. I didn't go through the whole 7 volumes because I'm not really into, young adult stories about wizard schools. That's not my thing. But I looked at it for the mechanical writing quality. And, if you open up a random page in the Harry Potter saga, it's very easy to see that this woman is an excellent writer. You look at it, okay, here's the characters, here's what they want, here's why the action is happening because of what they want, and all of this is understandable from a single page that you open randomly in the middle. So she definitely knows how stories are put together. But of course, when you get good at telling stories, you can often be very vulnerable to convincing yourself with the stories you tell.
Well, what's fascinating about it, and the reason why I asked, is that for those who know the stories, in a way, there's an irony. She's being consumed by the same monsters that she created in her book series. One of the characters, for example, is this Dolores Umbridge, who is an extreme feminist, school marm, taskmaster, who enforces what I would say what's happening to her, the people who are enforcing wokeism on her. All of the villains that she created, in many ways, she's being consumed by. There's this irony that's happening right now. And there's something of, I don't know, there's almost a Shakespearean level of greatness that's occurring with this discussion between Emma Watson and...
Are you familiar with the Jewish legend of the golem?
Yes.
This makes me think of the golem, where the Jews of Prague are so afraid of the Christians that they create this ultimate weapon and they set it loose in the streets and it turns on them. And the lesson here is don't set a mad dog loose in the streets in the hopes that it will bite your enemy. Instead, you have to have control over what you're doing. And I think feminists set out to restructure all of society, and a lot of the time what we're seeing now is all the effects downstream of that. And they are starting to, some of them are starting to sound very much like conservatives. Oh, look at the negative second and third order effects of what you are doing. Well, that argument didn't work on them 20, 30, 40 years ago. So sometimes people have to get burned to wise up. And sometimes they don't wise up even when they do get burned, because they're unable to make that causal connection between their ideology and what happens to them, even when their karma runs over their dogma.
From a positive perspective on this, just to kind of finish this with a strong, upbeat note, I think that Emma Watson beginning to straddle both sides, to straddle the fence on this issue, I think it shows that our side is starting to win the debate on this one, that wokeness is actually in retreat. And I argue that some of the political violence that we see against Charlie Kirk and others is rooted in the insecurity that the left feels because they're losing the debate.
Yeah, desperation. It's because Emma Watson has no opinions of her own, because she is a weather vane. Listening to her with an informed ear kind of tells us which way the wind is blowing. Some years ago, she was very comfortable saying, I'm here in support of every woman but one, clearly indicating the very woman who had made her wealthy and famous. And now she doesn't feel safe saying that. Now the weather vane is spinning around, trying to figure out which way the wind is going to blow. And the fact that this has penetrated so far into, the enclave of people who are most sheltered from reality is an indication that things are really falling apart for the left. They created an illusion of consensus, and it was really all they could do with all this manipulation of social media, with all this manipulation of elections, all they could do was really create the illusion that Western civilization was split down the middle. And now that control is falling apart, we can see that it's not. It's not split down the middle. The people who are sick of this shit, not necessarily conservatives, but just the people who are sick of this shit, are the majority of Western civilization.
Devin Erickson joining us live here on the Wake Up America show. He's the author of Theft of Fire, and the audio version is now available. Devin, where can we get the audio version of your excellent book?
Well, it's available for download at devinerickson.com in about a week.
Excellent.
We're actually just finishing up the last the last few correction notes.
Excellent. devinerickson.com. And as you can see, if you're watching the live show right now, his spelling, just like mine, S-E-N, devinerickson.com for the audio listeners of our show later. Make sure that you guys check him out at devinerickson.com. Hey, Devin, anything else on this topic or others that you would like to share with our audience before we let you go today?
Well, I think the important thing when we look at this is not to get too bogged down in the details. Oh, J.K. Rowling said this, Emma Watson said that. It's what is happening in the general discourse that allows this to happen. And I think the major point here is that the wind is shifting.
Agreed. Devin Erickson at devinerickson.com. He is the author of Theft of Fire. Get it at amazon.com and check out his website so you can get the audio version next week. Devin, thank you so much for your generosity of being with your time. And thank you very much to Christine for setting it up.
It's always a pleasure.
Have a wonderful day.
Watson. She's proud to call herself a feminist, but we all know she's a witch.
I'm here for all of the witches. The films that are nominated tonight for outstanding...
I'm here for all of the witches. Interesting. Not all but one. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and joining the Wake Up America show this morning. We have unlocked the bonus content. The Breakfast Theater will be here in a minute after a word from our sponsors. Just want to remind you guys, fall is here. If you're ready for some primetime NFL action, then tune into Westwood One for all the gridiron glory you crave. Jaw-dropping touchdowns to game-changing plays. Don't miss a moment of the excitement. Catch every snap, every tackle, and every victory on Westwood One. You can listen to the NFL on the NFL app, but see that QR code that's on the screen right there? You can also take a picture of that on the Westwood One Sports app or westwoodonesports.com via Westwood One station streams, or just ask Alexa to open Westwood One Sports. If it's the NFL, it's on Westwood One. There we go. Thank you all very much for your support of the Wake Up America show. We're also grateful for everyone, including rumble.com, who makes those ad reads possible, and we are so thankful for them. All right, so Breakfast Theater. All right, guys. Now, this morning, the Ministry of Wokeness is in full crisis because the world's most progressive prefect, Hermione Jean Granger, also known as Emma Watson, she got obliterated by her creator, J.K. Rowling. J.K. Rowling, who is an actual sorceress who conjured up Emma's entire career from thin air, just called Emma Watson ignorant of how ignorant she is. And honestly, when your literary mom says that, it might be time to accio some self-awareness. So, but never fear. Breakfast Theater is here. Ladies and gentlemen, don't go away, because after this brief little break, we are going to cast a spell. Hermione Granger, she's on a self-righteous redemption tour. She calls it reconciling my intersectional praxis with the cis-feminist narrative structure of my erasure arc. Roll the green screen, hit the voice modulator. Here she comes with a trunk full of trauma and a copy of Judith Butler tucked under her arm. Hermione Granger, when we get back on the Wake Up America show's Breakfast Theater segment. Don't go away. Bloody hell. I just read what Joe said about me. She is ignorant of how ignorant she is. Well, that's not very Gryffindor, is it, Joe? I mean, really, where's the kindness, the compassion, the emotional labor? I lit candles for Ukraine and Palestine and the house elves, thank you very much. And just because I politely distance myself from your, let's call them, trans-exclusionary metaphysical musings doesn't mean I wanted a war. I only said I support people who menstruate. I didn't mean to erase anyone. I was just trying to be inclusive, you know? I read a Medium post that said we shouldn't use the word women anymore because it centers cis-normative trauma. And now suddenly I'm the Voldemort to feminism. No, This is not how Hermione Granger goes out. I didn't fight a troll in the girls' bathroom for this. Listen, Joe, darling, creator, mother of magic, can't we just agree that reality is a social construct and move on? You created me. I mean, not me, obviously. I created me through a long, non-linear journey of self-discovery, a curated Instagram, and a TED Talk about sustainable almond milk. But still, you gave me life. You made Hermione. You made Emma. You made millions of pounds for both of us. I had an entire Dior contract just for quoting Gloria Steinem while holding a rescued chicken. Do you think that just happens, Joe? And yes, okay. Maybe I did say I was deeply saddened by your opinions, but I have to say, I was deeply saddened by them, and maybe I liked that tweet that called you Turfy McTurfface, and maybe I told Daniel Radcliffe he was the real brains of the operation, but I never wanted to hurt you. I just wanted to be applauded. I remember when I first got my Hogwarts acceptance letter. When I first got it, I was 10. You said, it's Leviosa, not Leviosar, and the world loved me for it. But now it's like every time I say woman, I have to footnote it with an asterisk and a peer-reviewed citation. And let's be real, you can't even say she in Hollywood anymore without a pronoun consultant. I had to do a table read last month where I was corrected for misgendering a centaur. A centaur, Joe. You said I could be anything. And now I'm being canceled by people who say women and spell it with an X, unironically. And for what? Because I didn't fully condemn you? Because I dared to say I treasured our time together? Look, I'm sorry if my feminism is artisanal. I'm sorry if my activism is mostly black and white Instagram slides and the occasional petition to free trans goats from binary barns, but I'm trying, Joe. I really am. I've read bell hooks. I cried during pose. I once corrected a waiter for saying sir. I've suffered, Joe. I sat through 3 Zoom panels on decolonizing the concept of brunch. But maybe you're right. Because maybe I was so busy being performative, I forgot to be principled. Maybe I was chasing the applause of the moment instead of the truth that lasts. Or maybe I really just wanted people to like me. Because without you, Joe, I'm not Hermione Granger. I'm just Emma, a vaguely French-sounding activist with a podcast no one listens to and a burning need for external validation. So if you're out there, Joe, in your Scottish castle of reason and transgressiveness, hear me. I'm sorry. I should have defended you. I should have remembered that you taught me how to be brave, not just when it was popular, but when it was right. Also, can we do a reboot? I need the money. Expelliarmus! Wingardium Leviosa! All right, guys, there she goes. Hermione Granger, brooming her way out of another moral contradiction faster than you can say Expelliturfus. All right, Breakfast Theater, folks, the only segment where Hogwarts meets Hollywood and everybody ends up crying in the gender-neutral loo. We'll be back tomorrow on the Wake Up America show. Thank you to everyone for all of your contributions. Thanks for unlocking the bonus content. Without the show would just... it'd be far less weird, and we would have a lot less fun. But we have a blast every single day because you guys are constantly so financially generous with us. Thank you so much for everything that you do. Thank you for your likes. Thank you for your comments. And if today's your first time watching the Wake Up America show, don't forget that you need to click that follow button before you leave, so that way you'll get a notification whenever we go live, which is 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. The Wake Up America show streams live 7 to 9 a.m. Central Time. If you haven't yet, make sure you check out the Grift Shop and exit through the Grift Shop today. Use that code for the Halloween collection. Shop smart. Shop for Liberty Shop. forlibertyshop.com. We call it the Grift Shop as a joke. You can get 15% off the Halloween collection, all of our funny conservative and libertarian Halloween merchandise. No Lives Matter Michael Myers shirt, always a hot product. Get 15% off when you use that code GOTH15, and we'll see you guys right back again here tomorrow on the Wake Up America show on the 4 Liberty Network.
Quite a few dramatic, almost folkloric stories about Assata Shakur, the American militant and self-avowed anti-government revolutionary who escaped from prison in 1979, not long after she was convicted of murdering a New Jersey state trooper. But a relatively quiet one stands out to me. During a walk, a police officer stopped and asked her for her papers. Her offense: she was black. It was the very sort of racist, dystopian targeting Shakur spent her life attempting to combat. Which is why it is richly ironic that this happened in Cuba, the place where she sought refuge from the racism and oppression of the US. How did she reconcile this? Look, there's racism here. There's racism in the United States, she told CNN in Havana in 1998. The difference is that the people at the top in the United States are the ones perpetuating that racist system, and the leadership here are trying to dismantle it. It's an answer that tells you a lot, not just about Shakur, but about certain political factions that still exist today. Shakur, who died last week at age 78, lived the rest of her life in, and often vocally supported, Cuba, where the system has long been known for imprisoning political dissidents, severely curtailing civil liberties, and forging equality in the sense that people are more equally oppressed. By Shakur's telling, she was a freedom fighter. In the early 1970s, after a stint with the Black Panthers, she joined the Black Liberation Army, an offshoot of the Panthers whose members were accused of murdering law enforcement officers, bombing buildings, and robbing banks, done in the name of forcefully taking freedom for black people from a government that denied it. She shed the name Joanne Chesimard and exchanged it for what she would become widely known as Assata, meaning she who struggles in Swahili, and Shakur, meaning thankful one in Arabic. Over the course of a few years, she was charged with multiple counts of robbery, kidnapping, attempted murder, and murder, all of which were dismissed or ended in an acquittal or a hung jury, until they didn't. In 1977, she was found guilty of murdering Trooper Werner Forster in a shootout on the New Jersey Turnpike. 2 years into her life sentence, members of the Black Liberation Army sprung her from prison. She resurfaced in 1984 in Cuba, the place she would call home for over 40 years, out of reach of U.S. extradition. Shakur's legacy is complicated by the era in which her American activism existed. It coincided, for one, with COINTELPRO, the notorious FBI counterintelligence program that illegally surveilled and stirred the pot among political movements deemed malignant. Those unconstitutional actions, often paired with shoddy casework by prosecutors, flimsy evidence, overcharging, unreliable witnesses, and politically motivated cases, led many judges to dismiss indictments entirely. It all added fuel to why groups like the Black Liberation Army emerged in the first place. People have constitutional rights, and you can't shuffle them around, a New York judge said, while dismissing several charges against Shakur. The activist and fugitive always maintained she didn't kill Forster. During her trial, 2 physicians testified that the bullet wounds she sustained on the turnpike, one of which shattered her collarbone, could only have occurred if she had her hands and arms raised above her head, precluding her ability to fire any weapon. "You have convicted a woman who had her hands in the air," Shakur said after the guilty verdict was read. But even if you believe her to have been wrongly convicted, the impulse among some, from the Chicago Teachers Union and the Democratic Socialists of America, DSA, to politicians, pundits, and activists, to treat her as a martyr for freedom is, to put it kindly, misguided. There are a few reasons for that. The Black Liberation Army was, for one, not vague about its support for armed struggle and urban guerrilla warfare. People have the right to free themselves from oppression by whatever means they deem possible, Shakur told NBC in 1998, when she again maintained she was innocent of murder. It's a strange sort of cognitive dissonance that effectively amounts to, I didn't do it, but if I did do it, it would have been okay. Yet the greater cognitive dissonance, and Shakur's real legacy, is grounded in the place she found sanctuary, and whose government she said was doing it right, Cuba. I eventually became convinced that the Cuban government was completely committed to eliminating all forms of racism, she wrote in her autobiography, Asada. There were no racist institutions, structures, or organizations, and I understood how the Cuban economic system undermined rather than fed racism. The same argument she would echo throughout her life, including in her late 90s CNN interview. It's a stunning claim to make, especially from an alleged radical for freedom. This is the same government that sent armed militiamen to shut down media for the offense of being opposed to Cuban dictator Fidel Castro, whom Shakur affectionately calls Fidel in her autobiography. It is the same government that put Christians, gays, and political dissidents in concentration camps. It is the same government that has, for decades, imprisoned people for having the audacity to criticize the state. And it is the same communist economic system that has tried to engineer equality such that it has resulted in hunger and widespread shortages, not just of food, but of basic goods. The argument still resonates among certain left-wing factions. The American state brutally oppressed Asada and her Black Panther Party comrades, the DSA said in a statement following Shakur's death. The Cubans welcomed her and other black revolutionaries with asylum, and their solidarity and loyalty allowed Asada to live out her days in Havana. But the asylum grants to Shakur and those like her had little to do with any devotion to freedom. Back then, if it annoyed the United States government, a Cuban diplomat told CNN's Patrick Oppman, that was a good enough reason to do something. In 2021, the island saw the largest anti-government protests in decades. Black Lives Matter, BLM, responded by blaming the U.S. government for instigating suffering for the country's 11 million people, of which 4 million are black and brown, with its embargo on trade, which the group said was punishment for Cuba's commitment to sovereignty and self-determination in the face of adversity. Cuba has historically demonstrated solidarity with oppressed peoples of African descent, like Asada Shakur. The U.S. embargo is unjust, but it isn't the root of the island's problems. That summer, I spoke to 2 black Cuban residents about the protests. What's wrong with them? One of them asked me about BLM. The notion that Cuban society is devoid of racism, he said, was ridiculous. So was the idea that Cubans are truly free. Our conversation took place over encrypted messaging, and a portion of it consisted of the 2 men deciding if they felt comfortable talking to me at all. You have to respond in a way that doesn't screw you over, said the other man. They're arresting people at their homes. In other words, there is a real movement for freedom in Cuba, one that comes at great personal risk. Perhaps Asada Shakur had a change of heart before her death and stood with it. Something tells me she did not.